name is Enrique Liñan, and I'd like to invite you all to participate in my next webinar on Friday, September 4th at 6 p.m. via English Teachers in Peru Facebook page. I'll be sharing with you some techniques to personalize your e-learning systems. We'll be talking about how to put it all together through a framework that will help you make your classes more dynamic and also help your planning and design of your sessions. So I hope to see you all there.
Hola, mi nombre es Cristel Oyola y soy gerente general de Fanglish. Y quiero invitarte este sábado 5 de septiembre a las 6 de la tarde a nuestro webinar llamado Enfoque por competencias, cambio didáctico o cultural. En este webinar estaremos entrevistando al súper reconocido Luis Guerrero, quien estará compartiendo con nosotros algunos cambios que debemos esperar en nuestros maestros y estudiantes para la implementación de este enfoque en nuestras aulas. Información será de gran utilidad también para los padres de familia, así que los esperamos a todos en este webinar. Recuerda, sábado 5 de septiembre a las 6 de la tarde. ¡Nos vemos!
Hace 3 décadas llegó el enfoque por competencias al currículum escolar de nuestro país. Y desde hace 3 décadas, muchos maestros peruanos todavía conservan algunas confusiones importantes respecto del significado básico de este enfoque. ¿Qué ha pasado? ¿Por qué nos ha costado tanto el cambio de prácticas? Hemos ensayado muchas respuestas, nos hemos formulado muchas hipótesis. Y quizás la dificultad mayor ha estado en que desde el principio no supimos plantearnos bien la pregunta. ¿De qué se trata el enfoque por competencias? ¿Es un desafío acaso de carácter didáctico? ¿O es en el fondo un problema cultural? ¿Quieres saber las respuestas? Lo invitamos al conversatorio que sostendremos el sábado 5 de septiembre a las 6 de la tarde con Cristel Oyola, una experta en el campo de la enseñanza de idiomas. Los esperamos. Gracias.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is teacher Kevin Laura, and actually we are really happy to have you today. We hope you're fine at home with your family, of course. And let me know you're ready to start with this wonderful webinar. We hope the answer is yes. So welcome to our 9th live webinar. I will give you some instructions, all right, that we have to follow during this webinar, all right? Do not forget, it's really important, please type your questions in the comment sections together with your name and place of living. Your answers to your questions and comments will be replied by our guest speaker at the end of the webinar in the question time session. And so important this part that you already know too. When finishing the webinar, we will share a link for you to have access to the exit ticket, which will be available for 45 minutes. So please pay attention to the whole webinar, please, just to answer correctly the questions. Now, let me introduce to you to Miss Nefti. Miss Nefti, are you here?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Hello everyone and welcome to the 9th webinar session in English Teachers in Peru Community Live. My name is Nefti and I am super excited to have you here once more. Let's introduce our fantastic guest speaker today. It is an honor for me to give you some information about Mr. Enrique Liñan. Mr. Liñan has taught ESOL at all levels for more than 15 years in Peru and the US. He holds a master's degree in Romance Linguistics from the University of Georgia, USA. As a teacher trainer, Enrique has presented in a number of national and international events and has worked as an ELT consultant for a number of educational institutions. Today's webinar is called Techniques for Personalizing E-Learning Systems. In recent years, the use of e-learning system has become more and more popular in the education field. A number of online courses and modules have been designed and launched in order to complement learning or, in some cases, to create virtual classrooms where students can learn at their own pace or guided by an instructor. We all know that there are a myriad of tools and programs that can be used for English language teaching and learning too. But the challenge is learning how to adapt them to our needs. In this session, we will discuss the benefits of using these tools in the classroom, as well as intelligent techniques to make them work for our particular settings. So, Mr. Enrique Liñan, the audience is all yours. Welcome.
All right, thank you everyone. Can you see? All right. Okay, I think I'll read here. All right, perfect. All right, well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So nice to be here with you all today. I'm really excited. To be honest, feeling a bit nervous. I guess it's the beauty of the internet makes it possible for us to do this now with like such a wider audience, right? And the other day I was talking to some colleagues about like, you know, how do you feel when you are preparing for a session, right? Especially I'm talking in front of my computer right now. I don't know what your reactions are right now. I don't know how you're feeling. So if you can type on the chat box how you guys are feeling. Can you write an adjective and tell me how you're feeling? I already told you I'm feeling a little bit nervous, right? And it's okay to feel nervous because that shows us that we are human, right? That we have feelings and that we are able to show that, right? So please type in the chat box how you're feeling. I want to read those adjectives. I'm going to be using my phone here to check what you guys say. Okay, I see some greetings. So interesting to see myself on the phone screen. All right, so yeah, I want to see excited and happy. I'm already looking at some of the answers. Thank you. Thank you. Who was that? What else do we have? Thank you. All right. So we're gonna get started. As you type your adjectives, I'm gonna start sharing my screen with you all so that we can get started with our presentation. Feeling great. Hi, Yvonne. I see Yvonne there saying hello. Nice to see you too, Yvonne. Okay, so I'm gonna start sharing my screen right now as I get to, okay, relax, excited. Nice to read that. Feeling great. All right. So we're gonna get started. And I have the presentation right here for you. I put together this presentation today using Genially. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Keep learning, yes. Okay, support it, awesome. So you guys can see my screen right now. We're gonna get started with our presentation today, all right? Again, for those of you who have seen or have participated in some of my workshops or one or two of my workshops or presentations before, you know that I like interaction with my audience a lot, right? I really like interacting with people that I'm sharing sessions with. So I will try to make this as interactive as possible. Okay. I also wanted to let you know that I have a bell. I have a bell that I brought from Chimney Rock in North Carolina in the United States. So I'll be ringing the bell when there are important messages for you to remember, okay? So if you hear a bell ring, it means that you have to remember that, because that will be included in the exit ticket, right? That you already heard about. So make sure that you are taking notes. If you have a notebook, if you have your Post-it notes, whatever you have handy, always keep a pen around and a piece of paper. So I will ring the bell to get your attention to something important in the presentation today. All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get started with I want to divide this presentation in 3 parts, right? So the first part, we're going to talk a little bit about theory. Again, I always remember one of my professors, my college professors. He would always tell me, and I'll say this in Spanish. I hope that everyone in the audience speaks Spanish. He would say, si no aprendes metodología, no eres un maestro, eres un enseñante, right? So as teachers, we need to learn about the theory behind everything we do in the classroom. That is very important. So what I'll be sharing with you first, the first part of the presentation, is some theoretical background, some terminology, and some basic concepts that you need to know about e-learning. That's the first part. The second part, I'll be sharing with you some specific techniques, okay, that you can incorporate into your classroom. And then the third part, I'll be sharing some tools. I'm sure you have heard a lot about tools, and you're using a lot of tools. So I didn't really want this session to be based on tools, but I wanted it to be more a place or a space for you to share and to learn and to type in the chat box about some of the things that you guys are doing and how you can improve them. All right. Okay, so we're going to continue now. So let's get started with e-learning. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to ask you guys to tell me what comes to mind when you hear the word e-learning, right? So what I'm going to do is I've used this site here. So I'm going to give on the chat here. So I'm going to ask you guys to go to this link. Okay, so Kevin is going to help me put that link in the Facebook group. So I want you guys to go to this link in Linuit, and I want you to type what comes to your mind when you hear the word e-learning, right? Because the title of this session is Techniques for Personalizing E-Learning Systems. So I want you to find this link. Okay, go there. When you find this link, I want you to go ahead and choose one of the post-its that you like best, the color you like best, and drag it to this area and write a word, write a sentence, write anything that you guys want to share regarding e-learning. What comes to your mind when you hear the word e-learning? Okay, so please go ahead, and I'd like to see some of the people who've joined. All right, thank you. Yes, so I hope you guys can access it and type here. I'm gonna wait a little bit for your answers. Okay, internet, I see some of the comments in the chat box too. Let's see if you guys can access the link and type this, because I'd like to see some of your answers here. All right, thank you. I see the link in the chat box now. All right, teachers. I know that it's hard for some people because sometimes you are watching on your phone and then to go to the link, it takes you out of the session, because it's happened to me before. So I think what we're going to try to do is, if you guys don't access the link or cannot access the link, oh, there I see some of your answers. You can also type in the chat box, okay? So please, if it's easier for you, just type in the chat box. If not, you can use Linoit to answer. So learning online, awesome. Tools, online learning, thank you. VLE, technology, change the rules of the game. I like that. I'm interested to know what VLE is, and whoever wrote that one, if you guys can type that in the chat box or clarify that. But I see some other learning online using all tools available, change the rule. Okay, technology. Okay, so I think a lot of people agree that the word here is online, right? So you know what happened? I was all right. So thank you. Okay here. Oh, there's a lot more. Wow. There we go. So learning online using all tools available. Some people saying giving their greetings. That's great. What was the question? Just tell me what online learning is for you. Okay. So many windows here. Okay. Online learning, using the internet for learning, learning styles. I like that one. Use the technology. Espacio virtual de aprendizaje. Thank you. Learning management system. I like this one very much. I'll put this up here. Technology. Use of technology. Learning by yourself on the internet. Okay, that's also good. Learn with the internet and a computer. Technology skills. Virtual environment to learn. Okay, okay. Virtual learning environment. That's what you guys were trying to do here. Now I see it. Virtual learning environment. All right. Videos, games, screens, many tools online. The way we learn through electronic means. Being creative using the internet. Learning, okay, from a distance. Okay. Teaching online using a virtual platform. Taking the best of the internet tools. You guys are amazing. You have so many ideas. I love it. Okay. Learning online through different websites. Use tic-tac-toe. Okay, I like that. Okay, so you see, I wanted to do this for one reason. Look at this tool and look at what happened with my tool right now. I wanted to use this for you to see how internet tools work. Internet tools and e-learning, you said it, you have a lot of different tools, but not all the tools work the way that you want them to work. For example, look at this, look at what's happening right now. I asked you to use this link to give me answers, and what's happening right now? It's all cluttered. Do you think it's the best way? Was this the best tool for this purpose? What do you think? You can type that in the chat box, okay? Do you think this looks organized? Do you think this looks like something that your students would be able to read? Was this the best tool for this exercise? What do you think? Was this the best tool? What do you think? All right, so maybe you can say, no, it wasn't, right? It wasn't the best tool for that. So here we go back, e-learning. So yes, you guys have said it all, and you have said it very well. And what I wanted to get your attention to is that a lot of times we're gonna be using e-learning tools, but not all the tools are gonna work for us the way we want them to work, right? And that's something that I want you to remember. Always think about this metaphor. It's a menu, it's not a checklist, okay? You don't have to do everything that it's out there. You don't have to do everything that every teacher is doing, right? You don't have to do that. You have to look at what works for you and make it work and just put it into practice, right? So I wanted to use this tool here, and I wanted you to see how I'm using that and see how sometimes it doesn't work, and it's okay. Trial and error, that's something that we're gonna be doing a lot here, all right? So we're gonna move on here with some basic definitions. You guys have mentioned some very interesting ideas, so I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit about this. So here we go. What is e-learning? E-learning, as you said, yes, is learning conducted via electronic media, typically on the internet, right? And what are some of the attributes? What are some of the challenges, the advantages of e-learning? As you can see here, some of the advantages of e-learning is that it's structured, right? There is a clear structure for it. It's tracked. What does that mean? What does structured mean? It means that there are learning objectives. We can have smart learning objectives. What does that mean? Learning objectives that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, okay? What does that mean? It means that when you are planning your online lessons or your e-learning systems, you need to think about something that is not too general. It needs to be specific. It needs to be something that you can measure, right? It's something that you can observe and you can say, yes, my students are achieving this, right? And it needs to be like realistic and achievable. It needs to be something that you know that your students can do. It needs to be relevant, right? It needs to be something that's contextualized. It needs to be something that's appealing to your students, something that your students like. And it needs to be time bound, right? You need to have some specific time that you will tell your students to work on something specific or to achieve a specific learning objective, all right? So think about SMART. I'm sure you've seen this before, but every time you are looking at your learning objectives or teaching online, make sure that your learning objectives are SMART, okay? Think about that. I would even take a picture right now and remember that and you know, put it on a Post-it note or something or somewhere else, right? So I'm gonna do this here, ring the bell, because SMART objectives are very important to remember, okay? SMART objectives are important to remember. What else do we have? Defined sequence of content. We're gonna see this in a minute. But for example, Aprendo en Casa is a great example of how you have a defined sequence. Every week you have a sequence and there's a structure of activities that you need to follow. Okay, what is another attribute, another advantage of e-learning is that it's tracked. What does it mean? What is tracking? Tracking systems, for example, right? You know, you can track people. Your phones, for example, your cell phones are a great way to track people. You know where they're going, right? So the good thing about e-learning is that you can track. You can know who your users are. You can know how long your students are using a learning management system. You know how who's logging in, who's completing work. So you can do that. You can track them and you can know who your users are. And another interesting thing about e-learning is that you can grade and then you can see who completed something or who didn't complete something, right? You can have a grade book on your e-learning systems, okay? So we're going to look at some of the disadvantages too, because it's not, everything is not perfect. Remember the exercise we just did. We started with Linoit and it didn't work. So sometimes, what are some of the disadvantages or some of the challenges that we have when using e-learning or when teaching online? We have this, look at that. And I wanted to use this GIF from this famous movie. I bet you all recognize this famous actor, right? So look at this. Has it ever happened to you? Has it ever happened that you are trying to log online, you're trying to connect to the internet to start your lesson with your students, and you see this, unable to connect to the internet? Has it ever happened to you? Yes? Did you know, fun fact, did you know that when you see this dinosaur and it says unable to connect to the internet, did you know that if you click the space bar, like this bar here, if you click this bar here on your keyboard, if you click this, that dinosaur starts running and it turns into a game. I don't know if you knew that, but if you didn't, now you know it. And it's fun. It's fun to do that because, you know, sometimes you're frustrated that you don't have internet, but you can start playing with the dinosaur. Just fun fact. All right. So of course there are a lot of advantages, but there are also some disadvantages. I think another big disadvantage that we have with e-learning right now is, as I was reading in the comments, some people have are running out of time. It demands a lot more time. Did you know that in order to create 1 hour of e-learning content, you need about 10 hours of work? that you need to do. Think about that. 1 hour of content that you create demands about 10 hours of preparation. It's a lot more time. It's true. Yes, it's a lot more time. Unfortunately, it's something that we're going to have to deal with right now. I'm telling you, like I had to put together this presentation last night, and it was a long night. It was a long night. All right. What are some of the types of e-learning? When we think about e-learning, we need to think about these definitions, right? We need to think about these definitions, especially for those teachers who are working for Minedu, those colleagues who are working who are part of Carrera Pública Magisterial here in Peru. And you have heard of blended learning, right? That combination of online learning and classroom and face-to-face instruction, and, you know, combining certain elements and putting them online, and you know, having a follow-up in the classroom. So we know what blended learning is, right? We have been using this even before the pandemic started, right? We have tried to incorporate blended learning. There are other ways of other types of e-learning. It's not only blended. There's also self-directed learning. What is self-directed learning? It's learning that you do on your own. You learn by yourself at your own time, your own pace. What is an example of self-directed learning? You can find a lot of courses online. For example, LinkedIn. Are you familiar with LinkedIn, or have you ever used LinkedIn? LinkedIn has a section that's called LinkedIn Learning, right? So you can actually create courses. You can find courses. I'm going to share, find my LinkedIn Learning right now. So you can actually have courses on LinkedIn Learning, and oh, sorry, I'm sharing. Okay, so you can find courses on LinkedIn Learning, and then you can do them on your own time. It's self-directed, right? As it says here, self-directed. I was trying to escape from this, but I can't because I'm sharing. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so I'll show you that in a minute. Self-directed, and then the other one is moderated. What is moderated e-learning? Moderated e-learning means that you are working on a course, but there is a moderator. There is a teacher or an instructor or someone who is helping you go through the course and navigate through the course, and maybe looking at your assignments, maybe checking your assignments. There is a moderator. So that is the difference between self-directed learning and moderated e-learning. There's going to be an instructor here, no instructor here. And the difference between these two is that you don't have to have interaction with the person at the same time. Here you can do it at your own time, and here you can do you can type things, you can submit assignments, and there's going to be a person giving you feedback, but you're not necessarily going to meet with that person at the same time, right? So those are a couple of examples of moderated e-learning. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to, okay, here we go. I'm going to give you an example of self-directed e-learning. For example, I'm going to go to LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning is a great example of self-directed learning. You need to pay for an account in LinkedIn Learning, but you can choose a course that you want, any course that you want. For example, here, it's 39 minutes. You can click on this course and you can start watching different videos and completing several exercises and quizzes on your own. There is no instructor. There is nobody who is going to give you or tell you, oh, you have to complete it by this time. It's self-directed. You do it on your own. All right. Now, moderated e-learning, I'll give you an example. So for example, AA e-teacher has great examples of moderated e-learning. Okay, here. Sorry about that. Okay, so for example, here we have massive open online courses, Moocs. So Moocs are a great example of moderated e-learning. If you go to this website, openenglishprograms.org, I'm going to share this in the chat because this one's pretty good, so that we can share it for you guys. So if you go to this website here, you guys are going to be able to look at different courses that are moderated. You can, there is a start time, an end time, and there is usually a moderator, an instructor who's going to be reviewing your journals, who's going to be giving you feedback, okay? So you usually have a moderator there. So that's moderated e-learning. It's a course. There's a pretty interesting one, by the way. Look, professional development for teacher trainers. And there is another very interesting one on TESOL methodology. I would really recommend this one course on TESOL methodology. It's a moderated course, okay? These are called Moocs. Moocs, that's massive open online courses. They are Moocs, okay? Remember this, this acronym. So here's my bell again. Okay, remember Moocs. Moocs are a great way for you teachers to learn about English language teaching, improve your teaching, okay? And they are moderated, okay? They're moderated. So we're gonna continue here. And blended learning is that combination, as we said, of online and classroom. Now I have a question for you. Which of these three are you guys doing right now? Which of these three are you guys doing right now with your students? Are your students doing self-directed, moderated, or blended? Which of these three are they doing? Let's see. I wanna see some comments here. Which of these three are you guys working on right now? Self-directed, moderated, or blended? Type in the chat box. I want to read that. I'm looking at myself on my phone, and it's funny. All right. So let me see. Let's see if I can read some of your comments here. Self-directed and moderated. Thank you, Viviana. You were the first one. Self-directed, Pamela. Okay, most people are doing moderated. Thank you. Blended learning, Josmar. Okay, some people might be doing that depending on their context. If you have, in the United States, let me tell you, in the US, a lot of people are doing blended learning right now. Even during the pandemic, they have students going to universities for certain sessions, and then the other part of the sessions, they are being conducted online. So they have blended learning. They have implemented that in the United States. A lot of people are doing blended. I see self-directed. Remember that blended happens when you have face-to-face instruction in the classroom usually. Okay, you have that combination. That is blended. You have face-to-face instruction. If you are working in Peru, and if you are a teacher in Peru, we are not doing blended learning. We're not teaching through that type of e-learning because during the pandemic right now, we are not able to go to the classroom, right? We cannot do that. So most people are doing moderated and self-directed. Great. But something to remember right now, teachers, is that I've been talking about e-learning, but there is something that we need to know about e-learning. A lot of us are not doing e-learning. A lot of us are actually doing this. Look, e-learning is well-planned online learning experiences. That's e-learning, okay? They are different from courses offered online in response to a crisis or a disaster. Teachers, I want you to know that e-learning is planned from with a lot of time in advance. And what we're doing right now is not necessarily e-learning. What do we call it? Oh, sorry. What do we call that? We're not necessarily doing e-learning because what we're doing right now is a response to an emergency. Okay. So what happens right now? And there's this expression here: shut the front door. It means like, what are you telling me, right? It's a euphemism for a different expression in English. Shut the front door. So what are we doing right now? We are responding to a crisis or a disaster, right? Or like a pandemic. So what we're doing right now is we are doing this: emergency remote teaching. What is the difference between emergency remote teaching and e-learning? What is the difference between that one? So blended learning happens when you are, you plan your activities in advance, some of them to be online and some of them to be in the classroom. That is blended learning. But emergency remote teaching happens when there is an emergency, like the pandemic. It's temporary, as it says here, right? There is expectation to return to your classes. The expectation right now is that we are not going to teach online, right? A lot of you, maybe it was the first time that you had to teach online. Maybe you had been teaching for 25 years, for 30 years, for 35 years, for 10 years, and you never had to teach online, and this was the first time. And you're saying, I want to go back to the classroom. How many of you have said that? How many of you have, maybe posted online on Facebook or on WhatsApp saying, extraño a mis alumnos, quiero regresar a las aulas, right? Because it's temporary. We know that this is going to go back to a time. After this, we're going to go back to a time when we are going to teach face-to-face, hopefully, right? And I think a lot of us want that and long that and expect that, right? So it's temporary. So when we are talking about emergency remote teaching, is not that we are going to be teaching online for the rest of our lives. The school system is not going to be like that in Peru. When you're thinking about e-learning or blended learning, you build your curriculum around that, and you expect that to continue. But emergency remote teaching is temporary. It's only for a certain time, for a specific period of time, okay? So I see that some people have already taught online. That's great. And you had more ideas on how to do this, right? But if you just started teaching this was the first time, I'm sure it was a challenge. You need to implement fully remote teaching solutions. And think about these, teachers. Remote teaching is different from e-learning, okay? Remote teaching is different from e-learning. Here's another bell ringing, okay? Remote teaching is not the same as e-learning. E-learning, again, you said, is using the internet. Remote teaching doesn't necessarily use the internet, right? We have to implement remote teaching solutions, access to instruction in a way that is quick to set up and readily available, right? So remember, teachers, remote teaching is not the same as e-learning. It's different from e-learning. Why? Because remote teaching can include mobile learning. You can send links to WhatsApp or audio to WhatsApp or text to WhatsApp. You can use text messaging. Text messaging doesn't use the internet, right? Radio, TV, DVDs, or any other solutions, right? So emergency remote teaching is different from e-learning. E-learning is planned well in advance, is more structured. You have usually a learning management system, which we're going to see in a minute, okay? But emergency remote teaching is a response to a pandemic. We were not expecting to do this. Back in February, I remember I was in Trujillo in February. I was training a group of teachers at a school there on el Currícula Nacionales. We were working on how to design our sessions and how to have our annual plan for English. We were not planning to do this. O sea, nadie esperaba que en marzo íbamos a tener que regresar a hacer esto. Por eso, that's the difference, right? E-learning, you expect that, you plan for that, you anticipate it, you look for resources. Emergency remote teaching, no. You find the resources as you go, right? And you expect to go back to the normal, right? So remember that difference. And honestly, teachers, we need to put ourselves in the back, because I know that a lot of people say like, oh my God, like it's crazy here. But I think teachers, we are doing a lot to help our students during this pandemic. If you think about other countries and what they're doing, there's not a lot. You know, I think teachers, you are amazing and you're very creative. I think we always say like, oh, we as teachers, we need to be very creative, and it's true. And during this time, we were able to show that, and we were able to demonstrate that, and we were able to find solutions and come up with ways to help our students learn. And that's amazing, teachers. So that's great. Congratulate yourselves on that. All right. The last thing that I want to include here, and I wanted to mention, is LMS. Somebody or a couple of people mentioned that at the beginning when we use Linuit. What is a learning management system? LMS. A lot of us like to call it la plataforma. I've heard that in Spanish a lot, right? And even parents use it and students use it. It's like, ¿qué plataforma usas? ¿Cómo se llama tu plataforma? Yeah, we like to use it. We like to say, call it platform. ¿Cuál es el nombre técnico? Learning Management System. That's the technical name, okay, that you use to call your platform. What are some examples of a learning management system, an LMS? Edmodo, Moodle, Canvas, Google Classroom. Okay, these are some of the most popular learning management systems around the world. Please type in the chat box if you have used one of these learning management systems. Please type in the chat box. Have you used Edmodo, Moodle, Canvas, Google Classroom, or maybe a different one? Maybe you have a different learning management system that you use. Okay, I see Moodle. I see Moodle, a lot of Moodle. Sometimes teachers tell me, oh no, I use this, for me it's called, I heard a teacher tell me, it told me it's called, this university here in Lima, they have a system called Paideia. But Paideia is built on Blackboard, I believe. So sometimes what schools do is they buy the license and they change the name. But the learning management system is usually one of these, right? Google Classroom, I see. People are using Google Classroom, Moodle, and Google Classroom, Edmodo, Canvas. Yeah, and please, it's important not to confuse Canvas with an S and Canva with no S, because that's another tool that you can use to create presentations, and we'll see that in a minute. So what is a learning management system, and what does it help you do? It helps you administer, document, track, follow, right? Track, and report and deliver your content. That is a learning management system. And that's a difference between emergency remote teaching and e-learning, right? Because usually when you teach either blended or moderated, you have a learning management system. You have a learning management system to put it all together. A learning management system is like, think about your, like a briefcase where you put everything together. That's a learning management system. Some people are telling me, using Teams or Zoom, for example, Google Teams or Zoom. Zoom is not a learning management system, and we will see that in a minute, right? Microsoft Teams, yes, you can use that as a learning management system, but Zoom is not a learning management system. Why is Zoom not a learning management system? Because Zoom doesn't allow you to document. Zoom doesn't allow you to report. Zoom doesn't allow you for your students to submit their homework, for example. So that's why Zoom is not a learning management system. A learning management system needs to allow you and your students to interact, to submit content, to push content, means to give content. You push content, you give content, and you pull content from your students. You receive content from your students. Okay, so you push and you pull. Okay, that's what we say in learning management system environments. We say you push content and you pull content. You give content, maybe listening or reading, and you push, and then you pull, writing or speaking, right? So we are also using learning management systems to help our students learn the language, okay? So yeah, WhatsApp, I see some other people using WhatsApp. So yeah, and WhatsApp, Zoom, those are great examples of using remote learning, but it's not necessarily a learning management system, okay? So that's why I wanted you to be clear on the terminology. A learning management system needs to have all of these features, and it's structured. It has a structure. So that's why these are learning management systems. But for example, Zoom is not a learning management system. It's a tool for video conferencing. That's what Zoom is, a tool for video conferencing. All right, so we're gonna move on. So we talked about 4 things here, okay? I want you to remember that, because now we're gonna move on to the next section, okay? We're doing well on time. Some of the techniques for e-learning, We're gonna move on to this second section on techniques. And in this section, I want you to watch this video from a friend of mine. She's a really good friend who is a teacher in the United States. She's currently teaching in the United States, right? And so she's going to tell us a little bit about what's happening in the US. Because sometimes we think, oh my God, in the US, everything is better and like everything is organized. And you can see that actually it's not. So I'm going to ask you to watch this video and to type some of the teaching tips that she's going to use for low tech, means very little resources, and very few resources, and no resources at all. All right. So I'm going to share this video with you. I'm going to stop share here, and I'm going to share the screen again, but optimize it for sound. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to go back and show the video here.
The situation either on their course or could purchase students who did not have them.
Okay, here we go.
So some of our students were able to get a laptop within time. Some of them were able to get technology, get internet access after a short time, and some of them were not. So what to do? Design everything you can for low or no tech students. What do I mean by that? Design it so that it looks good on a small screen, that it's easy to read from a cell phone, and also know what it looks like on a smartphone. I had a student who would ask me, hey, where do I find this information in the course packet? And I said, oh, it's on it's on page 7. And I found out that the cell phone doesn't show page numbers for that document. So providing a page number did not help at all, and we had to figure out another way. So after that, it was very important that I understood what things looked like on a cell phone so that I could describe to students what they needed to do. Try, if you're going to share videos, that they are short videos, or shoot for readings or listening materials so that it is easier for students to access. It doesn't require as much of the phone in terms of storage or processing to be able to download and use. Also, if sending documents and things like that, for some students, while it's important that they are able to actually download it because they need to go to a Wi-Fi hotspot, download it, work on it throughout the week, and then go back to the hotspot to turn in homework. Some students are able to use things on the internet but don't have storage on their device to be able to download and access it. So sometimes it's helpful to have information on the cloud, Google Drives, OneNote, Dropbox, things like that. Search for and suggest resources that don't require the internet. So for example, Lingui is a website that also has an app that is good for use as a dictionary, online translator, things like that. They also have dictionaries that can be downloaded and used offline, including a Spanish-English dictionary. Stay Blue is an app where students can create flashcards that they can use offline. Quizlet's very popular for this, but only allows iPhones to be able to access the flashcards offline. So if a student doesn't have an iPhone, that won't work for them. Be flexible. You might want things to be returned to you in a certain format, and the student might not have the proper software to be able
All right. So my friend here mentioned some strategies, right? She mentioned that we should use some apps, for example, that you can download, and I'm gonna have to just wait for me a second because there's a problem here with the cable, and it wasn't working. Apparently, my laptop wasn't charging. You see? There we go. I just realized. All right. So now it's connected. We're all good. So what I was telling you is, so she was recommending that we use something that actually our students can download, right? I can see on the chat box too that some people are telling me that their students don't have access to internet connection, for example. So you can use Lingui. That's an app that allows you to download a dictionary into your phone. So that's something that you can do. Another app is Study Blue. You can use flashcards and you can download flashcards here. She mentioned Quizlet, but Quizlet doesn't allow you to download flashcards if you don't have an iPhone. And something interesting that she mentions, but she mentions it later. You can watch it. I'm going to share that video too. If you want to watch the video, I'm gonna share this in the chat box. But something that you guys can do is you can do this scavenger hunt. And it's a very nice strategy that you can use with your students. What you do is you basically ask your students to bring something. If you're using Zoom, for example, and you do a scavenger hunt, or if you don't have the opportunity to have Zoom meetings, you can ask your students to send pictures of what they find in their house. I always remember when I was learning English for the first time in Trujillo, in San Juan School, San Juan High School. One of my teachers asked us to go around the house and look for words in English. That was like an eye opener for me. He said, okay, go around your house and write down all the words that you find that are in English. And I remember learning the word stainless steel. Stainless steel. That was a word that I learned because my English teacher in a public school told me to go around my house and look for words that are in English. A lot of your students might have spoons or forks, and on the back usually says stainless steel, right? And I learned that. So if you guys want to motivate your students to do things around the house, that's a great way to do that. Scavenger hunt around the house. Tell them to look for things in the house that are in English, or tell them to look for vocabulary words and send you a picture on WhatsApp. You see, it's a nice way to create that link with your students. All right, so we're gonna move on here. So those are some teaching tips that from a teacher from the US. So what else do we do when teaching online? So I have 4 techniques for e-learning, and I took them from a course called Designing for Online Learning from Global Online Academy. So 4 things that I want you to remember, teachers, and if you can take a picture right now, if you can remember these concepts, they are very important when you are teaching online, okay? So what do we have here? Design for student agency. What does agency mean? This is an interesting concept in education. Student agency means that your students have a voice, that your students have participation in the process. That's the meaning of student agency, okay? So think about how you can design sessions, design activities that give your students agency, that give your students power, that give your students a voice. We're gonna see that in a moment. The next one is design for wayfinding. What is wayfinding? You might think, Enrique, what are you telling me? Wayfinding, what is that? Finding your way? Exactly, that's wayfinding. Wayfinding is designing pathways, designing a place for your students to go around when they're navigating your courses. And cues, so pathways and cues that reduce the cognitive load. That's something very, very important. Reducing the cognitive load in the information that you're giving your students. Every day we're bombarded with information. There's information overload. We are getting information from our phones. We're getting information from the internet. Our laptops are, on TV, on the radio. There's information everywhere. So there's a lot of cognitive load, right? A lot of information. So we need to reduce that. We need to make it more digestible for our students, okay? So the next thing that I want you to remember, another technique, is design for assessment. And here I want you to think about assessment for learning versus assessment of learning. A lot of times we assessment of learning means, oh, I want to know how much my students know. That's assessment of learning. It's like a thermometer, right? You put the thermometer and you want to know how much your students have learned. But assessment for learning means you are assessing in order to help them to learn better. That's assessment for learning. You assess, you see what they're doing, how they're doing, and you help them learn better. You plan your activities around what they need to reinforce, all right? So that's assessment for learning. Using the assessment to inform your decisions when creating activities or designing activities, okay? Yes, I see some comments in the chat. Summative assessment, yes. Assessment of learning would be summative. Assessment for learning would be more formative assessment, okay? And finally, design for relationships, building rapport. How can you build rapport with your students if you are not in the classroom? Pretty hard. Right now, I cannot see you guys. There's no way I can see your faces. There's no way for me to interact with you. There's no way to see like how you're feeling. Is it too long? Is it boring? It's very hard to find opportunities to build rapport and to build relationships, honestly. So we're gonna see right now how we can build rapport, build that connection with your students, okay? So we'll see, how do we do that? So the first thing is student agency. You guys remember the meaning of student agency? Does anyone remember the meaning of agency? What does that mean? Student agency. I just mentioned that. Student agency means when you give your students a voice, okay? So a student agency is, again, you can type that in the chat box. A student agency is giving your students a voice, giving your students power, right? And here are some apps and some ways to do that. How can we give our students a voice? We can stay on schedule. Make sure that you have clear schedules. You can use apps like Calendly or Doodle in order to plan your schedules with your students, okay? So make sure that you create student agency by having clear schedules, okay? And setting boundaries with your students when they can contact you and when you have sessions. And then two other things that you need to remember is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous connections. What is the meaning of synchronous? Sync, right? Sync. Have you heard that word? In sync. To be in sync, to be synchronized, right? Estar sincronizados, right? Al mismo tiempo. So that's synchronous connections. How can you provide synchronous connections? Maybe using Zoom, okay? Maybe using Google Meet, maybe using Microsoft Teams. You can find different ways of creating student connections, okay? And I have here some tips, okay, for online face-to-face discussion. I'm going to share this with you on the chat box too, so that you guys can see this. Here are some tips so that you can have successful online face-to-face discussions. So here's the chat box. I'll share this with you. You can see them. You can check them later. You can read them later. You can save them if you want. But these are some tips so that you can have effective face-to-face discussions that are carried out online, okay? You can, for example, it says, provide an outline of discussion points in advance. if you want to have a conversation with your students, don't wait until the day that you have your Zoom meeting. Try to have your students prepare before that. So give them an outline before the actual meeting. Enhance the learning environment. How can you enhance the learning environment? For example, view gallery mode. You can enhance the environment, like sometimes there's distraction in the background, like what you have in the background. Think about that. Think about how you want to create that space. Plan your delivery, okay? Plan your sessions. Start with, have a routine. Have a routine with your students. Support discussion using tools. You can use different tools for your students. I know that you have a lot of those. We will talk about that in a minute. And finally, trust yourself. That's very important. There's a saying in Spanish that we use, right? Like, hay que creérsela, right? And in English, we say, fake it till you make it. Have you heard that expression in English? Fake it till you make it. So you need to trust yourself. Sometimes you might feel like, oh my God, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to teach online. But it's important for you to show that you are trusting yourself, to show that you are in control so that your students can borrow from that control. Okay, so there are some tips for synchronous connections. You already saw that. Now, asynchronous connections. What are some asynchronous connections? We can use here Padlet, we can use Flipgrid, we can use WhatsApp, we can use different tools so that you guys can have asynchronous connections. What does asynchronous mean? Remember the difference between these two, synchronous and asynchronous? Right. Synchronous means at the same time, right? Face to face, right now. A lot of you guys, I see there's like more than 700 people connected. So there's synchronous connection. I'm doing this and you're watching at the same time. And then also there's some opportunities for asynchronous connection. I see that a lot of teachers like to use Flipgrid, others like to use Padlet, others like to use Linuit. What other apps do you use for asynchronous connections? Please tell me. TED Talk videos, I see. Yes, Viviana saying fake it. Yeah, it's just an expression. What I was saying before, fake it till you make it, right? If you don't believe that you can do it, you need to practice. You need to believe that you can do it so that you can help your students, especially during these synchronous connections when you are having to have a session face to face, right? You are going to feel nervous, maybe, but you need to find that trust in yourself. All right, so we're gonna move on. Remember this two concepts, synchronous and asynchronous, and I want you to type in the chat box what and some teachers telling me like there's no connections, right? So if you are using some other apps for asynchronous connections, what other apps are you using when you are not connected with your students at the same time? Which other apps or websites are you using? Please type in the chat box. Peer Deck, I see. Okay, awesome. Let's move on to the next one. Wayfinding. Remember, I was telling you about wayfinding and reducing cognitive load. We have 3 tips for wayfinding. Okay, 3 tips for wayfinding. Wayfinding means, finding your way, navigating through your course, finding the resources, right? So I wanted to share some apps that you can use for that. For example, easy navigation. I know that some of you are telling me your students have no connection, or you're telling me your Moodle. I saw a comment, somebody was saying Moodle, we don't have, like, our school doesn't have the money to create Moodle. We don't have a learning management system. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you say, oh no, I just send links to my students, different links. I send a lot of links. The problem with that sometimes is that if you send them too many links, sometimes it's hard for them to put it all together. So for example, an example of putting and organizing your information is Google Docs. Remember the document that I just shared with you, that I just showed you? Is a document that has like a lot of links so that you can put all the links in one place. Your students go to only one link and you can upload all the information on your Google Doc. Another interesting thing is this Linktree. Look at this. Have you seen this before? Linktree. It's actually a great way to put different sections together. If you have different links, you have different videos, and you want to send them to your students, and you don't want to send them like on WhatsApp. And sometimes when you send something on WhatsApp, people lose track of that. You can send them here using Linktree. You only send one link, and you can put everything in one link. For example, here, this teacher, or actually it's an association, not a teacher, has different resources. Look, 4 different links. And what you do is you use Linktree to organize these links. And your students only go to this one, and they see all the resources that you want to give them. Right here, look, this is another way to organize your links. So it's easy to find everything in one place. If you don't have money, if you don't have energy or connections for a learning management system, you can use something like Linktree to organize everything. Some other teachers are telling me, oh, only WhatsApp. That's also fine. If you find sometimes the problem with WhatsApp is that you send a link and then your student says, teacher, ya mandó, ¿dónde está? And then you say like, it's here. But since a lot of people replied, gracias, profe, gracias, profe, gracias, profe, like 30 people replied, gracias, profe, then you lose the link, right? The important information up there. So maybe you want to organize your information in Linktree. Another thing that you can use to organize your content is Google Docs, as I said. Wordwall, I see some other teachers using that too. Microlearning. What is microlearning? Have you heard of microlearning? I'm gonna show you a video so that you can listen to what microlearning is. Okay.
DIY mathematics teacher. Frank is a mathematics teacher, but with a real passion for DIY. In his home workshop, he always has his tablet handy. He uses it for quick access to practical advice using how-to videos on YouTube. Frank's married to Joan, who, when she's not out and about in her job as a midwife, is always busy planning the family's next getaway. She's doing a Spanish language course using the Duolingo app. She tries to do at least one exercise each day to build up her skills in advance of this summer's trip to Menorca. She's determined that at least one of them should speak some of the lingo.
So as you can see here, microlearning, you have two examples of microlearning. One person using YouTube videos to learn something specific, to learn something that they wanted to do in their job, and another person using Duolingo to learn Spanish. So that's microlearning. Microlearning means using bite-size, small videos. If you remember the previous YouTube video that I shared with you, my friend Alana was sharing with you the strategy that she used. She actually has or creates short videos for her students. So there are different ways of using microlearning. Duolingo is one of them. You can use Duolingo, and you can even create a classroom in Duolingo. You can create a Duolingo classroom, and you can track all your students. You can see their progress. It's pretty easy, and it's pretty nice for teachers to be able to see everything in the Duolingo classroom. Let's see if you can see that. I don't know if I'm logged into my. It's not the Duolingo website, but it's schools.duolingo.com. You can see it here, schools.duolingo.com, for example, and you can see all of your classes, and you can create and track your students' progress. All right, so that's another one that you can use. I don't know if you've used it before, but schools. So it's schools.duolingo. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Yes, .com, schools.duolingo.com. You can use that to track your students' work on Duolingo. And that's micro learning. It means small, right? You're not giving them long videos. For example, this video after this session today, probably going to be 2 hours. It's going to be too long. It's not micro-learning. Micro-learning is small videos, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And every time you create a video, tell your students at the beginning, right? At the beginning of the video, tell them 3 things in 2 minutes, in 5 minutes, so that they know that they're only going to be watching 5 minutes. Watching 2 hours of video is pretty tiring. I'm sure. So it's better to make short videos for microlearning. Another example is word of the day. Word of the day is here, as you can see. Basically, you sign up here, you go to this website, word of the day. And what happens here is you can sign up for to receive 1 word every day. You put your email here, you type your email address, and you subscribe. And every day they'll send you an email with a new word. You see, that's micro learning. You learn 1 word every day. I mean, again, it's not it's just an exercise, right? You would need to put that into practice, and you would need to use that in different contexts if you want that word to stick with your students. But you can do that, in your WhatsApp groups with your students. You can tell them the word of the day is, and you can send them a picture of that word so that your students practice that word every day, or the word of the week, right? So that you can practice that way. So that's micro learning. Okay, micro learning. I'm going to share the link to the word of the day. I think this one is more for you teachers, so that you can learn a little bit more about your the English language. Word of the day. All right, let's move on here. And then the last thing is a pacing guide. Another way for wayfinding is creating a pacing guide. It means like some type of structure. I have an example here of a pacing guide from Aprendo en Casa, right? So Aprendo en Casa, they usually have el planificador semanal, right? A planificador like this one here, right? El planificador de actividades, and you have like what's gonna come like every week, right? And day 1, day 2, day 3. So that's another way to make it easier for your students, right? Pacing guide, telling them what activities you're gonna use, how you're gonna use them, what happens when, and at what time. Okay. All right, we're gonna move on here. Okay, the third thing that I wanted to mention was assessment, right? And there's a lot here. You can see a lot of apps, and I'm sure that you've seen a lot of these apps. So what I want you to do right now is like one of the things, I know that a couple of weeks ago, there was a workshop on gamification, and you talked a lot about gamifying your classroom and using gamification to make your classrooms more interactive. So that's great. You can find more information about gamification. There's tools for formative assessment. I'm going to send this to you. You can find a lot of digital tools for formative assessment. Look, Animoto, Ableton, CrowdSignal, Digo, Edpuzzle, Flipgrid, Kahoot, Kaizena, Nearpod, Padlet, what else? PictoChart, Quizlet. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of tools, teachers. So you can, go to Google and just type whatever you need, and then you can, sorry, stop sharing. And you can use all those tools. So I'm going to share on the chat right now that link. It's a Google Doc with, again, it says here, 24 digital tools that you can use for formative assessment. Okay, now I'll tell you something about these digital tools. Do you like Kahoot? Maybe you do, and it's great if you use it. Personally, I find that quizzes is pretty cool nowadays. I really like quizzes. Why? Because Kahoot doesn't allow you to look at the options on your cell phone, right? You cannot look at the options. You have to look at the options on the screen and then look at your cell phone only to click on the colors. And sometimes you forget because maybe your short-term memory is not so good, and then you forget about it, and then you're like, click here, and it's not the right answer or the answer that you wanted. So that's why I recommend using quizzes. We're gonna try it right now, okay? We're gonna try it. So we're going to go here. Let's see who wants to join my quiz. Go to join my quiz and enter the code, this one code here. So I'm going to copy this and then send it to the chat so we can, so joinmyquiz.com and then type the code here, sorry, type the code 007254, okay, 007254, okay? So if you go to join my quiz, okay, I'm typing that too, joinmyquiz.com, and then you join the code, enter the code, okay? Let me share the link here, okay? Let's see if we can share the link. Okay, I see some people are joining, okay? You can also share the link. Thank you, I see 4 people joining. There's more than 700 people, so I'll wait at least until we have, I don't know, 30, 40 people, maybe, so we can get started. It's a grammar quiz. It's a grammar quiz. And you know what the coolest thing about it is that I didn't create it. I didn't even need to log in. I only looked for one that I wanted, and I'm using it. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that apps like quizzes allow you to use them without having to sign in, without having to create an account, because sometimes you have to create an account and you forget your user, you forget the password, and it's chaos, right? So quizzes is pretty cool because it doesn't, like, it allows you to use the tools or the quizzes without having to create a user or an account. Okay, I see 60 people. Okay, I'm gonna get started like in 30 seconds because we don't really have a lot of time here. Okay, I'm sorry for the ones that are gonna be out. Okay, I won't until 18, okay? I know that there's 700, more than 700 people here. Okay. I know this is a challenge, I'll start, okay? There we go. You can turn off the music here if you want. But look at this. Would you mind at the airport, right? Would you mind picking me up, if you pick me up, if you picked me up? So you know that would you mind uses ing, right? So then you would choose that one. And then here, you use a cell phone in school, it's against school regulation. What is that? If it's against, then we're using at models, then you're looking at you must not, right? And then you can play like that. You can continue playing with your students this way, and you can see your leaderboard and see who's, look, you see Martin here is doing pretty well with 5 correct answers. So yeah, I mean, this is, I really like this leaderboard, and I really like the way it looks like, kind of, it definitely looks like a video game, right? So look at 53% of accuracy. So yeah, I'll just stop it there because it was just, you know, some exercise for you guys to complete. All right, we're gonna move on to the next. Thank you to the ones who are still playing there. I'll end it right now. Congratulations to Marty and Cisa. Who's Cisa? Is that my friend from Trujillo? Okay, I'm gonna end it right now so we can continue with the presentation. Okay, thank you. Julie was number 1. Congratulations, Julie. If we were in a face-to-face workshop, I would definitely have some chocolate for you, for at least for the top 3. All right, so that's the gamification. I know you have used it. I know that you're great at this. I know that you know how to create this. So we're gonna move on with formative assessment. I already shared the link with you. I will share something that I have used. This is not new. And the reason I wanted to show this about formative assessment is because it's not the first time that I have used this. I remember when I taught in Trujillo back in 2012, I already used Google Forms to create assessments for my students. So I want you to look at this. Look this. If you go to this one, this is I'll share this with you. Look, this is a form. This is a Google form that you can use to assess your students. Look, you can write your name here, and then you have to choose the right answer, and then you have to write your answer to this question, right? So for example, the first question, what is the answer? What Peru known for? And you have what is Peru new for? What are Peru known for? And what is Peru known for? And your students click on the answer, and then they can answer right here. Peru is known for its delicious food. Sorry, I'm typing with just one hand because I have my phone in the other one. Sorry. Okay. There we go. Right, and then you continue and you continue and you continue, and then you submit. And when you submit, I as the teacher, because I have access to the actual document that I created, I can look at the results and I can see where my students have made mistakes, if they have made mistakes when replying, if they don't know how to reply, and I can inform my next session. I can use this information in my following session so that I can support my students learning that way, okay? So that's formative assessment. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is feedback. Feedback is very important, and I wanted to make sure that you know that you give feedback to your students, and you can give feedback in any different ways, right? Maybe via WhatsApp, you can send a WhatsApp message, a voice message, and give feedback to your students. Maybe you can type, some comments on an email. You can use Google Forms, Google Docs, but feedback is very important, right? Hearing from your students is very important. A lot of times, and be careful with this, teachers here, another important thing. Less is more. En español decimos menos es más. ¿Qué significa eso? When we think about assessment, we don't need to have give them 20 worksheets, 13 links to quizzes, 2 Google Forms, and then 2 more Kahoot exercises. Okay, no, we want to do less, but that is consistent and that you, in a way that you can give them feedback. So remember this, less is more, menos es más, okay? Think about cognitive load, okay, when you give feedback. And make sure that if you give your students an assignment, they need to receive feedback. Otherwise, learning is not gonna be happening, right? They're not gonna be able to monitor their progress. If you think about Stephen Krashen's theory, the monitor model for language learners to be able to monitor what they're how they're producing the language. If you want your students to become to reach that level where they can monitor what they're saying, you need to be able to give them feedback that is sufficient and feedback that is timely. Okay, so don't give them 10 worksheets that they're not going to be able to respond to, right? So for example, here I think I have a link to one of the how you do that with Aprendo en Casa. For example, in Aprendo en Casa, you have the handouts, right? And you have the feedback here. You have the answer key, right? Or the answer key here gives them all the answers so that they can back on how they did the exercises. And this also promotes autonomy in your learners, right? Because it's easy to know, pásame las respuestas. But if you do that, then you're not actually not learning, right? You're not learning anything if you only want the answers. The idea is for them to look at those answers and compare the processes that they have gone through to complete those worksheets. Okay, the last thing in this section is relationships. building relationships, creating an online presence. This is something very interesting. How do you create an online presence? How do your students know? How do your students get motivated from you? Using WhatsApp is a very good way, but be careful, teachers. I've seen some colleagues using WhatsApp, especially when you share stories, right? Because a lot of you, are you using your personal WhatsApp number with your students? For those of you using WhatsApp, yes? Be careful with WhatsApp stories, because I've seen people sharing a lot of stories on WhatsApp sometimes, and sometimes those stories might be very personal to you, right? And you don't want, you always want to create a presence for you. You are the teacher, you are working with your students, and you need to have that online presence setting that example, right? Like right now that we are in times of pandemic, we need to be careful with what we're showing in WhatsApp, right? So maybe you're telling your students to stay at home, but then you show a picture that you went to a restaurant or that you went out, or you're not wearing a mask, right? So we need to be very careful of what we're showing there, because we are already creating that presence. Everything that we do or everything that we share will be seen by our students. Unfortunately, it's true like that, right? Create a video for your students, introduce yourself, model the language with your students. That's very important. Another very interesting thing that we can do is use icebreakers. Remember to do that in your sessions. I'm not going to do this because we don't have a lot of time, but I had a poll for you to do. For example, this one here, it's poll everywhere, right? So poll everywhere allows you to create polls that are pretty easy, and you can do that as an icebreaker. I'm going to send this to you. Okay, I'll do it. We'll have 1 minute to do poll everywhere. So for example, what happens here is I send you a link, and what I want you to do is, so you're going to go to, sorry, yeah, I'm going to close that. Okay, so you're going to go to the link that I sent you, and you're going to, you see, it says here, respond to, go to paulev.com, Enrique Liñan 154, and you are going to be able to look at this. Look at the rank the pizza toppings from best to worst, and you're going to be able to put them in order, right? And see if you can do that. And we are going to look at your answers here. And so please go to paulev.com/Enrique Liñan 154, and you're going to be able to do this. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so yeah, poll everywhere. Let me see. I hope it works. Yeah, so please, let's see if I'm going to tuck that there. So, I mean, this is just an example of how you can have your students put something in order, and then you can talk to them about why they did it, you know, why they decided to put one on top, or like why they decided to choose the other one, etc. Right? So, so go there and put this in order. You're going to have to put this in a ranking from the first, like the one that you love the most, to the one that you really hate. Okay, I mean, that's just a way for you to create to start with an icebreaker with your students at the beginning of the session or in the middle. And it's easier, of course, when you're working with a smaller number of people, right? If you have like 700 people like today, it's harder to do. I'm not sure if that's working with you. It's not possible to have access to it. Okay, so apparently it's not working. The link is not working. So we're gonna move on. It's okay. Sorry about that, but we're gonna move on because we don't really have a lot of time. So, but yeah, you know how to create icebreakers. Do something. The other day, I was playing with some colleagues with an icebreaker where we had to, you know, just show, you know, what's outside your window if you're doing Zoom, right? Or sending a picture of the dish that you made, or something that you prepared, something that you ate. You know, try to have an icebreaker that you know, helps your students build those relationships. And the last thing is, how do you give support to your students? There's a lot of problems with technology, with those links, with accessing. Like right now, I send you a link to poll everywhere and you're not able to access the link. So it's okay, we'll forget about it. But you can get frustrated if you work hard on this task. Your students can get frustrated too. So how do you give your students support? How do you get your students' ideas? Think about that. Sometimes our role is also of that of help desk, right? When they have a problem, they're always going to call us. So we're not only teachers, we're also IT, IT coordinators, IT specialists. We're going to have to solve problems with technology, with webcams, with email, right? With WhatsApp. We're going to have to solve a lot of problems. So that's also a way to provide that support to your students. So learning more about how to use those tools is going to help you and empower you to give that support to your students. And also ask your students, use surveys to ask your students how they're feeling. Maybe it's too much. Maybe they don't have time. Maybe they don't have access. So also, evaluate your students not only on how much they know, but also ask them how they're feeling and how the processes are going for them. This is the last part, I promise, e-learning tools. So we are reaching the last section. I wanted to show this video here because this is a video from Perú Educa that I found. It's only 11 minutes.
Hola, en nombre del Ministerio de Educación les damos la bienvenida a este espacio creado para la comunidad educativa. Hoy vamos a darles a conocer herramientas y recursos para desarrollar la educación a distancia.
Spanish of some of the tools that I've discussed today. It's pretty nice. It's on Perú Educa, herramientas tecnológicas. So you can check online and you can watch this video. It's pretty cool. Some e-learning tools. Okay, but something that I wanted to mention is this, teachers. Here's another bell ringing. It's a menu, not a checklist. Remember this. Sometimes we feel like, oh my God, everyone's using Kahoot. Oh my God, right? Maybe your colleague tells you, oye, ¿estás utilizando quizzes? This is, no, ¿qué es eso? ¿Cómo no vas a saber, right? Todo el mundo lo está usando. But you don't have to use it. Imagine when you are teaching online, imagine that you're going to a restaurant. When you go to a restaurant, you get a menu, right? You don't eat everything on the menu, right? You choose, oh, I want this, maybe this. Okay, that's fine. Depending on how you're feeling, depending on a lot of different factors. It's the same with online teaching, okay? You don't have to do everything. It's not I'm not gonna give you a list of like, oh, you have to use Kahoot, you have to use Edmodo, you have to use Jamboard, you have to use Genially, you have to use everything. No, you don't have to check boxes. No one is evaluating you to do that, teachers. Please don't feel that you have to do it. I wanted that message to be very clear. That's why I'm ringing the bell here, okay? Please don't feel that you have to do it all. It's okay if you don't. It's okay if you are learning. It's okay if it doesn't work, okay? You are trying, and that's a lot already. So please don't feel bad if everyone is using an app and you're not using it. And if a colleague tells you, oye, ¿por qué no estás usando? Tell them, it's a menu, not a checklist. I have my menu. I chose this from the menu. I only chose WhatsApp. That's what I use because that's what works for my students. That's great. Maybe you want to use a new tool. Great. And you will continue moving through the process, but it's okay. You don't have to use everything. Sometimes we get excited and we want to use everything, and we don't have to use everything, okay? They are tools. They are there to help us. Si no te hace la vida más fácil, si no te funciona, si no ayuda a tu proceso de aprendizaje, el proceso de aprendizaje de tus estudiantes, then you don't need to use it, okay? Just think about how you're feeling, how your students feel. You are the one who knows that. I am not going to tell you, use this, because I don't know what your context is, okay? I want to be very respectful of that, and I want you to think about that message and to remember that message, okay, my dear teachers? Please remember that. And with that, I'm going to give you the last slide of my presentation tonight. 5 digital tools for ELT. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't know this, maybe you have heard of these, maybe you haven't. Maybe you're telling me, Enrique, this is so old. I've used this like, I started using this 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I don't think so, because some of these are pretty new. So it's okay. You can use this if you want. I'm going to show you only 2 because I don't have time to show you all of them. They are very nice. I personally love them. One of my favorites is the Corpus of Contemporary American English, COCA. But I'm not going to show you coca today. I'm going to show you, although we're in Peru, maybe you hear coca and you're thinking about coca leaves or coca tea, but no, it's the corpus of contemporary American English. And corpus means a database of language. That's a corpus. In linguistics, we use a lot of corpus. We use corpus to see if one phrase that you are using is actually frequent. All right, I'll give you an example. Sometimes when we teach English, we teach phrases that we think are frequent, but they are not. For example, when I learned English, I learned that when you say, how are you? What is the answer for how are you? When I was a student, my teachers told me, you say, I'm fine, thank you. And you? So that's in my mind, I thought, oh, I'm fine, thank you. And you? But then when I went to the United States, I lived there for 2 years. I said, people said, how are you? And nobody replied, I'm fine, thank you. No one. And I was like, what? You know what they said? At least in the place where I lived, everybody said, good, how are you? So person A says, hi, how are you? Person B says, good, how are you? And I didn't know that. How do you find out about that? Using corpus, using a database of how people speak. Okay. So for example, I'll already start talking about coca. So I'll give you an example of coca. So where are we? Okay. So it's pretty easy to access coca. So you only write corpus. Look, it's called, the website is english-corpora.org/coca. So for example, the other day I was looking at Aprendo en Casa and I saw this section on Aprendo en Casa, right? So look, it's a phrase that said, it's possible, I'm going to make it bigger. It's a phrase that says, it is possible that the source of COVID be an animal. And you say, the source of COVID be an animal. What is that? I don't know what that is. So then you go to the Corpus of Contemporary American English. This is COCA here. And you look for possible that and how it's used. For example, look, it's possible that there be both conflict and concord. It's possible that something be, you have more examples here of how that is used. Maybe your student asks, teacher, ¿y por qué se pone be? You know, is, and you don't know. You can go to COCA, contemporary, the Corpus of Contemporary American English, and you can find more examples and you can tell your students how it is used. It's a pretty advanced structure using, it's called the subjunctive in English, right? So if you want to do that, what you do is you go here, right? And then you browse, sorry, I don't know what I was looking for, right? So you go to collocates and then you write possible that, and then you write be. Possible that anything be to the right, and then you're going to find the different words. Look, be, and you're going to find examples. Okay, you want to search, for example, another word. You want to see examples of how to use the word advice, for example. Advice, how do you use advice? How do you use that word? I don't know how to use that word. I want more examples on advice. So you can click here, advice, and you have a list of examples of how people use the word advice. You see, you have a lot of examples from real sources. You see, look, advice, advice, advice. You have thousands of examples. So that's the corpus of contemporary American English. I only wanted to show you this. You can explore more if you're interested. If you don't like it, don't use it, as I said before, okay? Another very interesting thing is this one, Youglish. I love it. I love it, and I'm going to show it to you. Why do I love Youglish? Youglish is a website that you can use to improve your English pronunciation. You go to the website, youglish.com, and I'll share that with you in the chat box. This one is great, teachers. I love this. I mean, I'm telling you, if you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it. But I love it because, look, you can even change the language. If you want to listen to words in Spanish, you can do that, but we're going to do English right now. So for example, a word that you don't know how to pronounce, maybe your students say, teacher, how do you say that word? I heard that some people, for example, use this word. How do you say these words? Do you say adults, adults? No, it's wrong because my teacher told me that you say adults. No, but my teacher told me that you say adults. Okay, let's listen to it. In the US, how do people say this word? Look, I have a lot of videos, 16,000 videos where they say this word.
This study tracked about 1,000 adults in the United States. And
right? She says adults. This is one, another video.
they ranged in age.
Pronounce this?
But children can also exacerbate the poverty of adults, given that they are inevitably.
Right? American English. Now I'm going to change to UK. Look, UK. How do people pronounce the word? This word?
Of assistance. They see us as adults, rational adults. What we need is information.
Adults.
We need.
Okay, let's look at another video. Watch this video. I think my internet's not working.
Many memories, and I think that's why people now as adults love them so.
You can tell your students, British English, they say adults. American English, they say, how do they say it? Listen to it again.
This study tracked about 1,000 adults in the United States.
So that's how you say it, okay? English is great. Any word that you want, for example, this is another nice word. How do you say this word? How do you say this word in the US? How do you say this word in the UK? How do you say this word in Australia? Let's listen to this.
Exactly. But sometimes it's good pedagogy. It's good teaching.
It's the transcript here. Look, the transcript is down here.
So that's just product design and good pedagogy and using the.
Okay, so that's how you say it. Very interesting, very good resource to look at a specific word. And you have the transcript here so that you can look at that. And if you want to listen to another word, you can look at the definition of the word. The definition of the word, when it's used as a verb, some synonyms, you need to see examples from the web, more examples, okay? You can change it in another language. For example, research, how do you say research in Spanish? Investigación, okay? So English is a great resource for pronunciation. I'm gonna ring my bell here again. A great resource for pronunciation. You can use this resource and you can help your students. If they don't know how to pronounce a word, they can use this. If you don't know how to pronounce a word, we are not perfect, right? We need to continue learning, so you can use English. And the last resource that I'm going to show you, I'm not going to show you WordWall. You can explore that on your own, and you can also explore Voice of America Learning English. But I'm going to show you Readable. So what is Readable? Readable is a type of software that allows you to. It's a type of software that allows you to test your readability. So for example, I have here, I think I opened it. Yes, it's this one. No, it's not this one. So I'm going to look at Aprendo en Casa, right? Semana 2, semana 11. Okay, semana 11. I have, this is for A2 plus, right? A2 plus, I have the activity for activities, the reading activity here, right? Okay, let's protect our mental health. I'm sure that a lot of the teachers who work in the public schools know what I'm talking about. So look, I'm going to copy this text. I'm going to copy this text, copy, and I'm going to go to this website, readable.com/text, and I'm going to paste the text here. Okay. Oh, it's not looking very well. It's not looking good, but let me see. Okay, I need to make some changes because I'm copying from a PDF, so that's why. So look, I have this text here. Okay, I have this text. I pasted the text here. How can we protect our mental health? And I'm going to click here, score text. And this is going to tell me, what level this text is. Okay. I had to log in, sorry. Because I didn't log in, so that's why it's not giving me that. Here, okay. So when you log in, look, it changes. Look, this is the text here, and it's going to give you the level. So here, when you click on grade, it tells you. You scroll down, and it tells you, for example, what is the level in the Common European Framework? Is level B1. Actually, I mean, it's okay, right? Because the text was supposed to be for B2, but this level is for B1. And it also tells you what the text is like. For example, here it gives you suggestions. Here it says, for example, this is a hard word to read. Consider using an easier word if possible. Okay? And it gives you, look, try to avoid using adverbs. Like you have, well, this is the objective, right? Using adverbs. So they are going to give you some analysis of the text. But the thing that I love the most is that if you use this, they can tell you what level your text is. So if you create a text or if you find a text online, you can change. You can modify your text and then use this website to find out what level your text is. Okay? So I'm going to stop there. I didn't complete all the 5 digital tools. You can explore WordWall on your own, and also Voice of America Learning English, Voice of America Learning English, and you can I'm going to share that on the chat box too. So Voice of America is pretty cool. It has a lot of resources. You can explore that later. All right. So yeah, I had a question for you, but we don't really have a lot of time. But yeah, finally, I wanted to end with this. Thank you so much. That's a nice picture of a sunset. I think all of us like sunsets, or most of us maybe, not maybe everyone. But if you enjoy sunsets, one of the most beautiful sunsets you can see is probably in Santorini in Greece. If you ever have a chance, it's beautiful. That's a picture that I took last year when I traveled there. So thank you so much for bearing with me for almost 2 hours. I know that it can be tiring and exhausting, but it's been great sharing with you, looking at some of your chat questions and comments. It's been great. If you have any other questions, if you want any other resources, you can email me. That's my email address. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Not Facebook. I think LinkedIn is easier for me to have professional connections. So you can find me there. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Liñan, for this outstanding presentation. We already have a few questions. Mr. Kevin Laura, can you read the questions for Mr. Liñan, please?
Yeah, thank you. Yes. First of all, thank you so much, Enrique. What a wonderful webinar. Yeah, we appreciate your time. Well, I here have a question from a teacher from Tecnos. Her name is Diana, and she says, in your opinion, what is Peru's education lacking when it comes to e-learning?
Wow, that's a big question, and I wouldn't say what is lacking. I will try to like put it in the positive, and I'd say Peruvian education has what I mentioned before. Creativity and access, putting together an online program like Aprendo en Casa with all the worksheets and all the information. I think it's great. Maybe creating a learning management system for all the public school system, making sure that all the students have a learning management system where they can access and where teachers can access. That might be an interesting way to put it all together. But as I said at the beginning, planning for e-learning takes time, right? We had to respond to an emergency, to the pandemic. But in the future, if we think about how we want this to look, how we envision this, maybe, systematizing things, putting it into a system would be an interesting thing to do.
Thank you so much. Now, a question that we have for you is, are TED Talks a type of micro-learning?
Well, it depends, right? Because TED Talks, some of them, you can shorten them and you can, do 2-3 minutes. You can do that. Because most TED Talks are 20 minutes, 15 minutes, right? So they can be long, and sometimes, it can be boring. But on the other hand, there are some people, if you think about the theory of intensive and extensive listening is that is the one that happens when your students are listening, you know, on their own for pleasure. So if they want to use it, it improves their extensive listening, but not necessarily micro learning because they might be too long.
All right, got it. Yeah. This is from teacher Daniela Vélez Fernandez says, what are some computer requirements that teachers need to have in order to use any learning system?
A connection to the internet, right? A connection to the internet, basically, right? And depending on what you want to use, if you want to record videos, if you want to use, you know, create more content, then you can do that. I personally, for example, I'm using my laptop, the webcam from my laptop, and I'm using, you know, very cheap earphones. You know, I don't really have a lot of great things. You don't really need to invest a lot. You need to start small. Start small and then start building from there. You don't need to start with like great things.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Here we have a question from Miss Betsy Mejia says, what system do you recommend if our students have a bad connection? Or maybe what apps or tools do you recommend us for this situation?
So make sure that whatever apps that you use allow for your students to download them. So, you know, they can go maybe, you know, to a place where they have internet access. I know that now during the pandemic, it's hard. But sometimes when you go to a mall, you know, on the weekend, you can connect to the Wi-Fi there and you can download the information, right? Some learning management systems like Moodle, for example, you can have an app and you can download the information to the app. Some other apps also allow you to work offline. So type on the internet, you know, apps that work offline. Think about that, okay? Apps that work offline. And look for apps that work offline so that your students can only download the app and use it, right? There are some, I know that right now there are very few apps that work offline, but you can find some of them. Another example is Lingui. Remember the video from my friend? She mentioned Lingui is a dictionary that you can download and use offline.
That's true. That's true. This is another question for teacher Diana Quevedo says, is there any difference between a paid learning management system and a free-to-use one?
Can you say it again, please?
Yeah, yes, of course. Is there any difference between a paid learning management system and a free-to-use one?
Yes, definitely. A paid learning management system will give you an opportunity to create a lot more courses, a lot more content, and a lot more. There's this thing called plug-in. A plug-in is something you can add to your course to make it look nicer. So definitely. But if we are starting right now, you, again, start small. Start with Edmodo. Start with Google Classroom. Start small, teachers. You don't need to start big or you don't need to start paying. I always recommend against using your own money to pay for an online platform that you are not going to be able to use. Start small, learn more, and then if you're comfortable with it, if you're comfortable with the learning management system, then you can find more ways to use it, and maybe you want to pay for something. But at the beginning, there are a lot of free apps that you can start with. Start small.
All right, and this is the last question for me. This is from teacher Martin Paredes, and he says, what tool did you recommend for collaborative work apart from Padlet, Mentimeter, or one that you already applied was Linoid, right? Yeah.
I honestly go back to Google Forms. Google Forms is the easiest to use, honestly, and you know, I think it's the one that's used more, like the most widely used collaborative tool around the world. So go back to Google Forms only. You don't need to, again, because it's new, it doesn't mean that it works great. You know, if you are comfortable with one tool and you like it and it works, then stay with it. Maybe try another one, a new one, if you're feeling curious, right? But test it first, right? Again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Continue. Stay with us, please. Don't leave. Okay, Enrique. Please.
Okay.
now we are going to continue with something really important that everybody is waiting for. Please.
Please, Kurt, are you there? Can you help us with this presentation? Tomorrow we have a great webinar. Okay.
Thank you, Mariela.
Okay, Kurt. You can continue.
I was talking without
Okay.
microphone
Yeah,
off.
okay. Yeah.
All,
Okay, Kurt, continue, please.
all of you are cordially invited for our tomorrow's webinar. It's going to start at the same time at 6 o'clock p.m. And it's more like a panel discussion between Luis Guerrero, principal of Education Magazine, and our beloved friend, Cristel Loyola. They are going to talk about enfoque por competencias, cambio didáctico o cultural. So let's watch a video about it. I hope to see all of you tomorrow.
Hola, mi nombre es Cristel Loyola y soy gerente general de Fanglish. Y quiero invitarte este sábado 5 de septiembre a las 6 de la tarde a nuestro webinar llamado Enfoque por competencias, cambio didáctico o cultural. En este webinar estaremos entrevistando al súper reconocido Luis Guerrero, quien estará compartiendo con nosotros algunos cambios que debemos esperar en nuestros maestros y estudiantes para la implementación de este enfoque en nuestras aulas. Esta información será de gran utilidad también para los padres de familia, así que los esperamos a todos en este webinar. Recuerda, sábado 5 de septiembre a las 6 de la tarde. ¡Nos vemos!
Hace 3 décadas llegó el enfoque por competencias al currículum escolar de nuestro país. Y desde hace 3 décadas, muchos maestros peruanos todavía conservan algunas confusiones importantes respecto del significado básico de este enfoque. ¿Qué ha pasado? ¿Por qué nos ha costado tanto el cambio de prácticas? Hemos ensayado muchas respuestas, nos hemos formulado muchas hipótesis. Y quizás la dificultad mayor ha estado en que desde el principio no supimos plantearnos bien la pregunta. ¿De qué se trata el enfoque por competencias? ¿Es un desafío acaso de carácter didáctico? ¿O es en el fondo un problema cultural? Si quieres saber las respuestas, lo invitamos al conversatorio que sostendremos el sábado 5 de septiembre a las 6 de la tarde con Cristel Loyola, una experta en el campo de la enseñanza de idiomas. Los esperamos. Gracias.
Y bien, buenas noches a todos. Vamos a continuar. Sé que muchos están esperando el exit ticket. Please, a los administradores pueden ir colocando ya el link en los comentarios, que se mantenga fijado para que todos nuestros colegas puedan ir accediendo a ellos. Pedirles por favor un poquito de paciencia nada más. Ya estamos por concluir el webinar. Es muy importante darles el siguiente tip para que ustedes puedan ver cómo es que manejamos nuestro grupo de Facebook, English Teachers in Perú. Hay un tema muy importante que tal vez ustedes no han podido ver, porque esta última semana he estado viendo que muchos han estado buscando de repente material relacionado a justamente lo que se va a dictar durante la semana en Aprendo en Casa, ¿no? Por ejemplo, hemos estado haciendo esta semana verbos y bueno, todos estábamos compartiendo material relacionado a ello, así como otras semanas, dependiendo del tema, vamos colgando los materiales. Pero como ustedes pueden ver aquí en la pantalla, a la derecha está, les va a aparecer lo siguiente. Son los temas más populares, son las etiquetas que nosotros hemos colocado a cada una de las publicaciones, de los posts que suben, dependiendo del tipo de publicación que sea, les estamos colocando etiquetas, de manera que ustedes van a poder ver todos estos temas que ya están divididos, por ejemplo, acá, ¿no? Por Aprendo en Casa, videos, vocabulary, ¿no? Comunicados, English Web, worksheets, etcétera, grammar. Los hemos dividido de manera que cuando ustedes ingresen a nuestro grupo puedan ver estos temas a la derecha cuando están haciéndolo desde la computadora laptop y lo van a ver en la parte de arriba, sale como temas populares o etiquetas. Y si ustedes hacen clic ahí en los 3 puntitos, van a poder ver todas las etiquetas que están ya separadas como una biblioteca virtual para que ustedes puedan ingresar y una vez que hagan clic, les va a salir ahí temas populares, Aprendo en Casa, videos, comunicados, ya lo hemos etiquetado todo. Si ustedes hacen clic, por ejemplo, aquí en Aprendo en Casa, ¿qué va a suceder, no? Todas las etiquetas les van a mostrar, primero se les va a mostrar, ustedes eligen lo que ustedes desean encontrar, lo que ustedes necesitan de material. Por ejemplo, esta semana querían verbos, ¿no? Si hubiéramos sabido utilizar de repente esta opción, hubiéramos visto las etiquetas y hubiéramos visto que acá dice verbs. Si le hacíamos clic aquí, lo que sucedía es que nos aparecían todas las publicaciones que han sido hasta la fecha por diferentes colegas posteadas en nuestro grupo y están relacionadas a verbos y mucho material. Acá también tienen, por ejemplo, en la primera a la izquierda dice Aprendo en Casa en inglés, 71 publicaciones. Seguro que algunos maestros quieren ver de sesiones pasadas o reforzar. Si ustedes hacen clic ahí, van a poder visualizar todos los materiales relacionados con la etiqueta Aprendo en Casa. Esto es muy importante, maestros, para que puedan de repente tener un apoyo también en nuestra comunidad, en nuestro grupo de Facebook, y estas etiquetas o temas los ayuden a ustedes a que puedan tener los recursos mucho más rápido. Ya lo vamos a ver de repente en otro webinar. Vamos a pasar rápidamente, Angelita, ¿estás por ahí? A compartir con todos ustedes el link del Exit Ticket.
Así es. Nuevamente agradecerles a todos por estar con nosotros esta noche. Enrique, muchísimas gracias por los grandes aportes que nos has brindado el día de hoy y esperamos también contar contigo en una próxima oportunidad. Y entonces, profesores, les pedimos por favor que ingresen al link que ya está colocado también en la sección de comentarios aquí en la página de Facebook y recordemos que este está por 45 minutos, ¿sí? Tomen eso muy en cuenta, por favor. Además de rellenar sus datos de manera correcta para que los materiales que nosotros les enviemos lleguen al correo indicado. Eso es, entonces, creo, todo en cuanto son las indicaciones en cuanto al Exit Ticket. Nuevamente, muchísimas gracias y los esperamos el día de mañana, nuevamente para poder ver el webinar que toca el día de mañana, que será súper genial. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias a todos. Recordemos que el día de mañana el webinar, debido a al tema, ¿no? Que es el enfoque por competencias, que está envuelto dentro del currículo nacional, que todos los docentes estamos aplicando, es un tema general, de interés general, y pueden invitar a todos sus colegas de las diferentes áreas para que puedan verlo. Ahora nos despedimos todo el equipo de English Teachers in Perú, que está presente. Mr. Enrique, de repente podemos encender, Mr. Liñan, podemos encender las cámaras. Estimado Enrique, muchísimas gracias por haber aceptado nuestra invitación. Muchas gracias por todo el tiempo que has dispuesto el día de hoy para compartir todo lo que sabes con nosotros. Gracias porque siempre que hemos pedido de repente tu apoyo para cualquier cosa, estás ahí. Muchísimas gracias una vez más de todo corazón. Sé que muchos maestros están completamente agradecidos también por todo lo que han podido aprender hoy día. Muy buenas herramientas que seguramente nos van a servir. A muchos nos van a servir si es que de repente estamos en ese contexto, y si es que no, pues más adelante. Nosotros somos docentes que cambiamos de lugar, de trabajo, y siempre es importante que todo lo podamos aprender, lo podamos utilizar, lo podamos poner en práctica en cualquier momento y en cualquier lugar. Y lo que hemos podido aprender el día de hoy, realmente, particularmente, han habido muchas herramientas que desconocía y que seguramente van a ser de mucha utilidad para todos nosotros. Bien, estimado Kurt, aquí está el equipo de administradores, Kurt Vilela, Miss Ángela Salazar, Miss Davita Naya, Miss Julia Millones, Miss Lilia Espinosa, Kevin Laura y estimado Enrique Liñan. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos a todos el día de hoy. Que tengan un muy buen día.
Thanks, everyone.